Timid youngster David Rice has a keen interest in beautiful Millie, who fantasies about venturing to the far corners of the planet. At the point when he shocks her with a little gift, a snow globe of the Eiffel pinnacle, prodding menace imprint gets it and tosses it out onto the cold surface of the stream. Not entirely settled, David branches out on the ice and recovers it, waving, then falls through the ice and is cleared away from the opening by the quick current. He is sure to pass on in the freezing water, without air, furthermore, unexpectedly ends up lying inclined in the library between the shelves, in a gigantic spout of gallons of water, panting and alive. He walks home, dousing wet, where his dad berated him. David goes into his room, putting a chain on the entryway. In any case, when his furious dad blasts it open, there is just a whirl of wind. David has evaporated. He winds up in the moist walkway of the obscured library, and acknowledges he has magically transported there once more. It occurs to him that he at long last has a method for completely changing him, to get away from his circumstance, the same way his mom deserted the family when he was 5. He magically transports home and recovers a little reserve of cash and a couple of effects. Be that as it may, before he leaves town, he stops outside Millie's home. Millie isn't supported by her mom's arms. She is certain that David is dead. She hears a commotion outside, steps carefully out into the yard, what's more, finds the snow globe sitting on the swing set. From this she realizes he is alive, yet he doesn't answer her calls. The following day he is on a transport to the city, where he leases a modest room. He works on magically transporting in the recreation area, figuring out how to control his power. Then, at that point, he cases a bank, and loots it by magically transporting straightforwardly into the vault around midnight. He giggles as he understands his sack isn't adequately large to remove all the cash, magically transports back to his pitiful lodging for another pack, furthermore, rehashes this until his room is inundated with cash and he lies on a bed of it. Nonetheless, the baffling Roland shows up at the bank examination, professing to be from the NSA, strikingly unsurprised by this locked entryway burglary. It is obvious that he knows about magically transport capacities, and is essential for a strong gathering that needs to track down this burglar. Years have gone by, and David has a costly city loft, papered with photos of his reality voyages, and a little vault room loaded with cash. He partakes in the delights of life any place they are, riding in Fiji, eating on the Sphinx in Egypt, getting a young lady in an English bar. He stages starting with one spot then onto the next in his home, as opposed to strolling even 2 speeds, and ignores the difficulties of conventional individuals displayed on TV caught in rising flood waters. His tranquility is upset by the appearance of Roland, whose electrical weapon and wires keep David from magically transporting. We discover that Roland's main purpose for existing is to obliterate jumpers, individuals who magically transport, for, just God ought to have the ability to be all over the place. Frantic, David oversees some way or another to move away, transporting back to his childhood room. His dad is made aware of his presence, and comes to the room entryway, beseeching him to remain. David magically transports away as his dad powers the entryway open. His pure way of life upset, he chooses to see his lost love, Millie. He tracks down her still in a similar town, working at a bar. Yet again his old foe imprint figures out how to stir something up. Furthermore, in a hurry David magically transports with him into a bank vault, then leaves him there. Getting back to the bar, he requests that Millie go with him to Rome. She is stunned, however, as it's her long-lasting dream she can acknowledge. At the point when they get to Rome, he partakes in her enjoyment as he shows her around the old city, yet is shied away when they find the stadium shut. Instead of take no for a response and return one more day, he circumvents the corner. Furthermore, when she makes up for lost time, he is holding an entryway open to concede her. He keeps on opening entryways from within as they seek after their confidential visit, until they attempt to go down to the floor of the arena. Unexpectedly he is shocked to meet another jumper, Griffin, who illuminates him that he's by all accounts not the only one and that there is an entire gathering like Roland, paladins, who need to kill jumpers. Also, 2 of them abruptly turn up. Griffin is ready to battle their strategies, and in the end quells the aggressors and magically transports away. David follows Griffin's magically transport to his den, getting clarification on some pressing issues. He is baffled, and Griffin's concise clarifications, for example, making sense of he will drop a paladin into certain sharks, never really illuminate him. Griffin makes sense of that David can't stand to have a sweetheart, family, or companions, that they are dead, that the paladins will kill them to get to him. David gets back to Millie and consents to leave, and they move away from authorities inside the stadium, just to be kept outside. David doesn't hop, he advises Millie to return to the inn, yet she rejects. Hours after the fact, David is as yet being addressed by the police, who are holding him and his identification until a few different specialists show up. Out of nowhere, a lady shows up, advising him to get out and forsake his young lady, letting him know how long he needs to get away. He perceives her from his experience growing up pictures, she is his mom. He finds Millie and takes her to the air terminal, then makes sense of pitifully that he can't return home with her. Meanwhile, Roland has been gotten to converse with Imprint, whom David left in a bank vault. Mark, depleted from over and again recounting his story to doubting authorities, makes sense of what David's identity is, where they are from, all that he knows. Jumping all over this chance, Roland visits David's dad. David gets back to ask Griffin more inquiries, and this time the gamble to his family sinks in. He magically transports to his experience growing up home, and tracks down his dad on the floor. Crying, he magically transports his dad to a medical clinic trauma center, attempting to find support for him. He magically transports to see Imprint in prison, asking everything he said to Roland. Mark says he let him know everything. David understands that Millie will be in peril when she gets off the plane in the USA, however when he asks Griffin for help, Griffin declines. David follows Griffin through hops, attempting to persuade him. Griffin swipes a vehicle and they ride together, Griffin magically transporting the vehicle through traffic as it suits him. They trade a few pieces of data. The paladins killed Griffin's folks when he was 5, and David's mom left when he was 5. David gets some information about magically transporting the vehicle, and Griffin laughingly recounts a jumper who attempted to magically transport a structure he passed on in the endeavor. At long last, Griffin consents to help David for a restricted commitment. The numerous drawings of Roland in Griffin's home clarify that he has resentment against this paladin. They show up in the USA, and Millie's flight previously showed up an hour prior. He magically transports to her condo, expecting to get her out rapidly, however Roland and his assault crew show up before he can start to make sense of. He figures out how to magically transport her to Griffin's sanctuary, and Griffin reprimanded him for it, in light of the fact that Roland can straightforwardly follow his magically transport. Griffin gets ready to forsake his home, yet when Roland seems an incredible fight starts. At a certain point Griffin magically transports a transport at Roland, who figures out how to plunge under it as it skips. David is caught, webbed up in a side of the room by Roland's electrical wiring to be discarded later. As Millie liberates David, her outrage at the circumstance and apprehension about his weird power are apparent. She requests that he simply bring her back home, and let her be. Normally, she is before long caught and kept locked down. Griffin intends to take a bomb to Millie's condo to kill Roland, notwithstanding, this will include killing every other person there, including Millie. David doesn't need that, so both of them magically transport all over the planet, battling about the bomb, then over the detonator, tumbling from the Realm State building and showing up in a disaster area, where David at last snares Griffin in some fallen electrical cables as compelling as Roland's snares. David gets back to Millie's loft, knowing he's strolling into the place of extreme peril. They utilize electric wires surrounding him to secure him, mooring them to the walls. David has Millie move near him, and, recollecting Griffin's story, David doesn't attempt to move the entire structure, simply the parts joined to the anchor wires. As he utilizes his power, the structure starts to tear separated, and the rooftop breaks as the condo vanishes free from it. David magically transports Roland to a cavern and leaves him there, saying he ought to be thankful he didn't drop him at the sharks. David evaporates, and Roland strolls to the cavern opening, ending up a confined precipice in the Great Ravine. It is winter, and we see David approach a costly home and thump. A teen young lady answers the entryway, followed minutes after the fact by David's mother, who sends her little girl to her room. David is there to figure out what everything means, and why she left him as a youngster. She makes sense of that she is a paladin, and when he caused his first to magically transport at age 5 she was unable to kill him, so she left him since she cherished him. He figures she ought to accomplish more, and she makes sense of that she is, the present moment, since she's giving him an early advantage. He understands he won't get more from her. He goes out, and Millie meets him outside. He asks where she needs to go, and she says, "Shock me." They magically transport away. Thank you for watching and see you again in another movie story.